So I'm in the process of removing the cylinder head of a 3.2 litre Shogun. What I've done so far, the airbox, air filter and hoses are off, turbo hoses are off, radiator's out, and I'm just in the process now of taking the fan off. Underneath I've removed both sump guards, the plastic one and the steel one behind. I've drained the coolant, and there's a drain plug next to the oil filter. Takes a 12mm socket. If you undo that drain plug and nothing comes out, it probably means it's blocked up with silt and debris. So get a bit of wire, stick it in there, and you should be able to drain all your coolant out into a bucket without making a mess. So to remove the fan, you can get a spanner onto here, and to get these nuts on the back you can rotate the fan. Okay, I've removed the battery and battery tray to give better access. I'm going to start by stripping down the exhaust manifold side. So we've got to take this recirculation pipe off the top, and the easiest way to do that is remove this bracket, unscrew those 4 bolts, unscrew those. The heat shields, the exhaust pipe is already detached underneath, so we're going to take the exhaust manifold off complete. So the exhaust recirculation hose has been removed, and that's going down into the inlet manifold. And if you haven't blanked this off already, then that hole there will probably be full up with black soot and oil. But you can see right in there that the exhaust manifold's nice and clean inside, because mine's been blanked off for a while and I've cleaned that all out. Right, so the exhaust gas cooler has been removed. Next job is to get this heavy cast iron bracket on here which holds the exhaust gas cooler. To get this off, there's bolts along here, distinct from the manifold, and also underneath. To get the underneath ones off to improve access, you want to remove the turbo water feed pipe, because that sort of obstructs access really. That needs to come off anyway, as does the turbo oil feed, and the oil return on the bottom and the other water feed, so they all need to come off. So now we'll remove the oil feed for the turbo. Try not to get these banjo bolts confused. The oil feed one's got a very small hole in it compared to the water feed ones, which have a larger feed hole. And that water supply banjo on the side of the turbo, they've got to be removed. The actual pipes are attached to the block. They don't have to be removed at the other end. You can just basically bend them back. You could remove them, but I think access is difficult. I've never bothered, so they can just be bent back. So as soon as those two, that water and that oil feed, are removed, then it's just a case of undoing the manifold nuts, and the manifold should lift out, and that's one side done. A couple of things I forgot. Thermostat housing's got to come off as well. This pipe won't just pull out, so yeah, fan belts have got to be slackened off, and the thermostat housing taken out. And also we've got an earth wire here, and that's obviously got to come out as well. But as you can see, exhaust manifold's all freed up. You don't need to lift it right out, it can stay where it is. You've got plenty of clearance there to get the head off. So now we'll start on the inlet side. First job, take the intercooler hose off, fuel filter holding bracket, diesel pipes, and diesel pipes off at the pump. Drain the filter first, otherwise you'll spill diesel everywhere. So diesel filter and fuel pipes are now removed. The next thing we'll do is remove the dipstick, and also remove this. it's plastic, and if you try and take this soundproofing off without removing this, you'll probably snap the little plastic end off, and it's important. So the soundproofing's been removed, taken the buzz bar off. Next step is to take off this top part of the inlet manifold, which is just these two bolts here, and there's a little bracket under here. Then that just lifts off. Once that's off, the fuel pipes are going to come off, and there's a clamp here which I've already undone, another clamp here, and there's a clamp that takes in all 4 pipes down here that's got to be removed as well. Already loosened this one. So yeah, top part of the manifold, and then the fuel pipes. So inlet manifold is off. Before we take the rocker cover off, there's a clamp here for a fuel return hose from the injectors. That nut, that bolt holding that bracket on, so that bolt's got to come off. That oil, the diesel return pipe banjo there, that's got to come off. Glow plug's got to come out. The water hose attachment, that's got to come off. Cam chain tensioner has got to come off. There's an oil feed here which goes to the vacuum pump, that's got to come off. And on the front, this sound insulation, this vacuum hose have got to come off. And then we can take the rocker cover off and start inside. So rocker cover's off. First off, we're going to take off the fuel return pipe along the top of the injectors, then we'll take out all 4 injectors. You need to be very careful with not to knock or damage the injector tips, and yeah, put them somewhere nice and clean once they're out. Then we're going to take off the top, notorious top cam chain guide. So this is where the fun bit starts. You've got to be very careful here. Obviously anything that goes down here will go down in your engine, potentially get caught in your cam chain or your timing gears and end up in the sump. So it's a good idea to stick some tissue or rag down here so nothing can fall down. The threads on these are reversed, so to loosen these you've got to turn them clockwise. You can hold the cam chain, you hold the cam shafts here with a spanner, and then turn these clockwise to loosen. Now you've got to keep tension on this chain at all times. If you let this chain go slack, then it could end up jumping a tooth on the gear at the bottom, on the sprocket at the bottom. So as I say, the chain's got to be kept tight, and you've got to lock these sprockets to this chain. So as soon as you've undone this, then get a cable tie through the hole, ideally 2 cable ties in different places if you want to be totally safe, and clamp that chain down on that sprocket. If the chain moves a tooth on here or moves a tooth on here, it's going to upset your timing. And obviously if it moves the tooth on the bottom, it's going to upset your timing. And the only way to put that right is to take the whole front casing off, and the sump has to come off to do that, and the front axle, and it's a big job, so you want to be very careful. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and loosen these, get these cable tied up, and then once these 2 sprockets are cable tied to the chain, we generally, what I do is cable tie the chain onto here, so the lower part of the chain's kept taut, and then we can remove the camshafts. Right, so 2 sprockets are off, they're cable tied together. I move them around slightly so that they overlap. That doesn't matter because their position on the chain can't change, as long as the cable ties were put in place straight away. I've also down here got a cable tie just over, holding the 2 sides of the chain together over the top of that chain guide, and I've got some rag, I've got some paper towel shoved in there so hold the sprockets up and they can't slip down. This isn't particularly secure down here. We'll certainly have another look at that before we lift the head off. But for now, the camshafts are free, so we can take off the camshafts. Right, so camshafts are off. Put a couple more cable ties around here just to secure it, and yeah, we can now take the head bolts off. Best thing to do is to get someone to give you a hand when you're ready to lift the head off, and get a length of wire or string through the centre of the sprockets. That way, when you're lifting the head off, someone can keep tension on this and make sure that things don't slip. Right, let's lift it off. So there we go, head's off. This is still secure. Right, we've now finished preparing the block. So first of all, went over the block surface with a scraper, scraped off all the traces of gasket material. I then went over it with a nylon scouring pad. Again, just give it a really good polish, make sure it's perfectly smooth. We then used some pipe cleaner or some rolled up paper towel and put it down through the holes for the head bolts to clean out the holes. Make sure there's no oil or water in there. We then ran a tap through all of the head bolt holes in the block, and finally just blew the holes out with a compressor, blew the boards out with a compressor. So we're all nice and clean, ready to go back together. Right, we're just about to put the head gasket on, and the head, you want to get some sealant on here. There's a little lip here that you can feel, and it's easy to forget, so get a little bit of sealant here, a little bead of sealant there, and the same on the other side before you put your head gasket on. In this case we're reusing the head bolts, so I basically washed them in petrol to get rid of all the traces of oil off the bolts, because we're going to need to mark the bolt heads with Tipp-Ex in a minute, and you can't do that if they're covered in oil. So they're all washed. I'm going to apply a little bit of oil to the washers and to the threads of the head bolts before they're installed, but the actual heads need to be free of oil so you can mark them. So the head bolts are in, just finger tight, and now we start the tightening sequence. First off, tighten them all in sequence, starting at the centre, working out 98 Newton meters. Slacken them off totally, and then again in the centre working out, tighten them to 49 Newton meters, and then we'll mark the head bolts. So bolt heads are marked with Tipp-Ex, so 90 degrees in sequence, followed by an additional 90 degrees in sequence, and then we're done. So camshafts are back on. You want to make sure that all the rockers are all fully loosened off before you torque down the camshaft holders. It'll just help it go down nice and evenly. Right, so top cam chain guides installed. When you do this, get a spanner on the camshafts, make sure this chain's loose before you put that in, then you're not putting any stress on it. Cam chain tensioner is installed and released, and you can turn the engine over until you get the timing mark come up. Where are we? So you can see the mark on the pulleys on 0. Projections on the camshafts are up, so that means number 1 is at top dead centre. So now we can do the clearances. So intake manifold's pretty much on now. Just going to tighten up the glow plugs, and be careful not to do those too tight. 18 Newton meters, they don't need to be any more than that.